All right, there we go. So now, without further ado, I don't feel like I need to introduce Ari because I feel like everybody knows him, and that's why you guys are here. So I'll let him introduce himself, and I'm going to turn it over to him. Thank you so much for being here too.
All right. Well, it's good to be here. I'm a psychologist out in Westchester, and I do a lot of work with adults with ADHD and couples, and I do a lot of presenting and writing. I apologize for last time missing. It's literally the very first presentation I missed at sort of a last minute kind of a thing. Everything worked out well in the end, but my wife and I spent 6 hours in the ER and got home at midnight, after midnight. So, definitely would have preferred to be hanging out with you guys rather than sitting in the ER, but here we are. So, um, but let me just ask Angela, in terms of timing, so what are we thinking, like in terms of how long to present and then get into the Q&A?
So we usually present until about 8,
Mhm.
8-ish. And then the Q&A is after that. So we usually wrap up around 8:30. So what we could do is like officially wrap up around 8:30, but if anybody wants to hang on, if you're still available, that's fine. I could leave the room open for a little bit.
Okay, sounds good. So, all right, so let me go ahead and I'm going to share my slides and I'll talk for a bit and then we'll do some discussion and questions and whatnot. So, um, all right. So I assume everybody can see that. Looks okay. Um, so what we're going to talk about here is how to have a good relationship when one partner has ADHD. And a good relationship means a relationship where both partners are happy. A relationship with only one happy partner doesn't last that long before something happens and nobody's happy, right? So, um, so let's start with this kind of
Excuse me,
this
I don't,
idea.
excuse me, sorry. I don't know if it's just me, but there are these big black squares in the middle of your presentation. Is anybody else seeing that?
Is it in the
There's one across the top.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
better.
bottom. And there's one to the right in the corner.
Is it? I don't know what that would be from. How about, is it still doing that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm. I do not know what that would be from. Let me stop the share and try it again. Um, because I don't have anything else up, so it shouldn't be. Yeah, what is that? Why is that there? Is it still showing weird black boxes or anything?
Yes.
Weird.
No, it's up the top. It got, the top one got smaller.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
top one is gone. Oh, now it's back.
Let me see. Why the hell that, like, I don't know what that is. I I mean the one at the top is the sort of, buttons bar, but that should go away. That should sort of pop up. Um, I can try moving the picture thing. Um,
Well, that moved one of them.
okay. I don't really know what to do to fix it, so I think we should probably just
Yeah.
kind of go forward.
Yeah.
So, but so here's kind of a basic idea that ADHD doesn't invent new problems. It just exaggerates the universal ones, right? So everybody gets distracted. Everybody has times where they forget things or they procrastinate or we just don't do the things we should do. But if you have ADHD, and especially if it's not being well managed, that's obviously going to happen more often. Um, every couple has things they disagree on, either what to do or how to do it or when to do it, right? That's not unique to any particular couple, that's universal. But if one partner has ADHD, and again, if it's not being as well managed as we would hope, it's going to show up more often. So I say this to just sort of emphasize the point that like you're in good company here. And as much as our own individual struggles always feel bigger and more personal, every other couple on the block is also having their own struggles. Um, Now, the whole thing about a diagnosis of ADHD is that it can really it can really be a game changer in how either an individual or a couple or a family kind of deals with things. In the sense that all of a sudden now you are in this better position to do something about it, right? Like those struggles that you never quite were able to get enough traction on or enough consistency now is like, oh, this is why. This is why this was so hard for me, or this is why it was so hard for us or for our child or whatever, which is why, groups like this can be so important to kind of get that information out there, to increase awareness, to give people a sense of kind of hope that things can indeed get better. Um, Now, obviously that's kind of easy to say, but it may not change the fact that as we sort of look back on our life, there's this feeling of like, you know what? Why did this have to be so hard, right? If I had known this 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 40 years ago, how much different would my life have been? Or how much different would our relationship have been? Right. So sometimes part of this involves kind of mourning the past, right? Like coming to some sort of acceptance or understanding of what happened that's not what you would have wished to have happened. There's also the question, some people were just diagnosed recently, other people had been diagnosed long ago, but maybe it wasn't as well managed as we would have hoped, right? And if it wasn't, then why wasn't it, right? Like what got in the way? Or if it's a new diagnosis or if it's an old diagnosis, how does each partner respond to it, right? Does it give you a sense of hopefulness, hopeful optimism that like now we know what we're doing, now we can do something with it? Or does it give you a sense of frustration and disappointment and we've tried it all, what's going to change anyway? Right. So a lot of feelings can come up with any diagnosis, frankly. Now, the thing about it is, if you're going to live with other people, certainly in a romantic relationship, but honestly, even just as roommates, right? Like, there's going to be stuff that comes up. Doesn't always work out well, doesn't always bring out the very best in us, but, hopefully it does at least push us to work on some parts of ourselves. So, in order to get along better as a couple who lives together, obviously it's important to have good, kind of solid practical skills, right? Like I'm all in favor of good strategies to manage ADHD or anxiety or depression or sleep problems or just, I don't know, all the random crap that we need to deal with in life. Like I am all in favor of better strategies. Um, but also, life is still always going to be a little bit messy. None of us are going to be perfect. There's always going to be challenges that we need to deal with and stuff that's not the way that we wish it to be. But at the end of the day, life doesn't have to be perfect in order to feel like we're living a meaningful life, right? That we have good things going on and good people in our life to do it with. So to the extent that even if, like, let's say you do take medication for your ADHD, right? Hopefully it's helpful, but it's not going to be perfect and it doesn't last 24 hours anyway. So, like, to whatever extent that you're still sometimes forgetful and still sometimes distractible, how much does it actually interfere with your life, right? Can you still live a good, meaningful life and have a good, satisfying relationship, even so? Um, Now, of course, when we first get together as a couple, probably we're like two single adults with not tons of responsibility. But as a relationship goes on over the years and over the decades, things probably get more complicated. So to stay happy in our life and to stay happy in our relationship means we need to evolve with the times, right? We need to learn new skills. We need to learn better ways of relating to each other. And again, that's going to be true for every couple. So it kind of brings me to this line that I use a lot, which is a good relationship pushes you to become a better person, right? That like it is in that process of having struggles, of resolving disagreements, of fighting our way through things, right? Like more than anything else, that is what will challenge you to kind of work on your stuff, right? Because nobody is going to challenge you more than your partner is, right? Because they have the most at stake in what you do, right? What any of us does has a big effect on our partner, right? Because they are right there and they care a lot about what we do and how we do it and what our attitude is when we do it. So, um, partly this is why I think couples therapy can be so impactful because your partner is going to call you out if you're not doing the work. Again, not always fun, but it definitely gets the job done. Um, Now, if somebody in a relationship has ADHD, or I mean, it could be anything else, but like, we're talking about ADHD tonight. Um, Certainly ADHD can impact your ability to be the partner that you want to be, right? As in like, I want to be consistent. I want you to count on me. I want you to know that like I got your back. I'm good here. Um, but also ADHD impacts the other partner's ability for them to be the partner that they want to be. As in, I don't want to be a control freak. I don't want to be angry all the time. This is not who I am. It's really easy to personalize those sort of ADHD moments, right? That whole thing of like, if you loved me more, you wouldn't forget to do the things I ask you to do, right? It's not an insane idea. It kind of makes sense, right? And there certainly are some people who are kind of jerks and they don't do things for people because of being a jerk. But like ADHD can make you look like you don't care, but it doesn't mean that you don't, right? And it's easy to kind of personalize those moments. Um, it's also easy to get kind of defensive about it, right? As in, like, why am I always the one to blame? Why is it that no matter how much I do and how hard I work, it's still never enough and you're still always unhappy, right? And that is a really hard place for a couple to be in. But we kind of ask a lot of our partners these days, right? In this sort of age that we live in, that on the one hand, we want partners to be kind of reliable and consistent and supportive because like, somebody has to go to the grocery store and pay the bills and sign the paperwork for the kids at school and all those boring things. But also, we want someone who's kind of fun to hang out with, right? So another way of putting it is we kind of want a partner who is both a life insurance salesman and also a stand-up comedian, right? And that is a lot to ask of one single person. Um, but what can happen in a relationship that's struggling is the partners sort of push each other further and further out, right? So the partner who is maybe even just a little bit better at being the one to remember to pay the bills and go to the grocery store and handle the boring, responsible things, they wind up having to do more and more and more and more of it. Meanwhile, the partner who's a bit better at saying, like, hey, we should have some fun, let's go do something, right, becomes more and more and more of that because, like, we're not having any fun around here. So the couple sort of pushes each other further out, and it feels like this is who you each are, but it's not. This is who you each are. You've been pushed to this. And it's easy to kind of demonize each other to be like these extreme positions, but really we're something more in the middle. Um, and that's the place that we need to get a little bit more back to. So Russell Barkley has this famous quote that I use all the time, which is ADHD is not a disorder of knowing what to do. It's a disorder of doing what you know. So things like don't interrupt your partner when they're talking, not a hard concept. I think pretty much by third grade, right? We've all pretty much learned that idea. But like a lot of things in life, knowing it is the easy part, right? Folks with ADHD know really well what to do, which kind of brings me then to my sort of add-on to Barclay's famous quote, which is that, in fact, people with ADHD know far better what to do because they've been told far more often what to do as kids, but even as adults, right? If you're not doing the thing that somebody else thinks you should be doing, that other person is going to start to have some ideas and opinions about it. And then they're going to start to have feelings about it, and then they're going to start to say things about it. So people with ADHD then get a whole lot more sort of commands, corrections, and criticisms than folks who don't have ADHD, right? And this is where what is inherently more of a kind of neurological kind of information processing condition becomes more sort of interpersonal in the sense of how does this show up between people? How does this influence how people behave in those interactions? And then what lessons do they learn from it, right? Like, what do all these corrections teach you about yourself, about other people, and about how you relate to the world, right? So this is where the psychology begins to show up. So the kind of classic dynamic, the sort of stereotype, the cliche here is that when you have one partner with ADHD, this is a line from Ned Hallowell. I wish I could claim this for myself, but he says those with attention deficit tend to marry those with attention excess, right? That there's this kind of stereotype of the person with ADHD marries the person who is really organized and really on top of things and handles the details well. Now, there's reasons why we wind up with a partner we do, right? We're not assigned to them, we choose them for the most part. So, there's some complementarity there, right? There's a match there. But as much as it can be good in some ways, it can also not be good in other ways because when we're different in certain ways, it gives us more things to disagree about, more things to fight about, more things to be offended and indignant about. So like that difference can also create a lot of sort of strife, right? So there's a lot of nagging. There's avoidance of things because nobody likes being nagged, and just basically everybody feels frustrated. Usually these are not like they're not the grand betrayals of like you've been having an affair or you invested our kid's college fund into crypto and then we lost it all, right? It's not like the big betrayal. It's more that kind of death by a thousand cuts, right? It's just that the small stuff, but just too much of it. As in, like, yet again, you didn't stop at the store to pick up the milk like I asked you to, or you left your shoes in the hallway and I keep tripping on them, or you didn't do the thing and now I have to do it, right? Like, that's the place where couples with one ADHD partner kind of suffer the most often. Um, Now, it's really easy in those situations to look at the person with ADHD and say, well, if you didn't do that stuff, probably things would be better in this relationship. And that's half of the truth, right? That's half of the story. But here's a really important point. It's still only half of the story. The other half of the story is that relationships are always a two-person job. There is always that other person in the relationship. There's always that other thing that part that they add to what happens, what makes things hopefully better, perhaps what makes things worse. And I say this not because I want the partner with ADHD to feel better, right? In other words, it's not all your fault. I say this because I want the non-ADHD partner to not feel like a powerless victim to what happens, right? That like you have the ability to influence what happens in the relationship. Now, maybe some of the ways that you're trying to influence it aren't working as well as you would hope. That's probably true. But it doesn't mean there aren't other ways to sort of shift how you approach this to actually create a relationship where both of you get more of what you want. And that's going to be a kind of a message we're going to keep coming back to here. So, the reason then why couples fall into this underfunctioner, overfunctioner relation dynamic, like they very much make sense, right? Like there's definitely a logic to it, even though it's not a thing anyone actually wants. It's easy to get there. And the reason is if the partner with ADHD tends to not sort of think of things, right? They don't sort of feel the pressure of the deadline until things come a whole lot closer, or stuff falls off the radar because they get distracted by something else or they forget to do something. It makes sense then that the non-ADHD partner feels like they need to take that onto themselves, right? If I don't remember to sign the kids up for summer camp, there's no summer camp, right? Or if I don't remember to whatever, then it doesn't happen, right? So they kind of take it on, they take it on, they take it on because it's too anxiety provoking for it to not happen. So they wind up with too much, right? That sort of balanced workload gets completely unbalanced. As much as there's this sort of like stress and just tired, like being exhausted from doing all the things, there's also the sort of mental burden, right? That whole thing of like, I need to keep track of this, or I need to see if we got the permission slip, or I need to follow up and make sure that the thing happened that was supposed to happen. Um, so mentally, it just becomes much more exhausting. Meanwhile, the partner who has ADHD, when they are doing things, it can sometimes feel, or it can too often feel like whatever they do, it happened a little too late, or it wasn't quite the right thing, or you didn't do it in the way that I wanted you to. So it kind of feels like this, why bother anyway? You're not going to like it and you're just going to do it yourself. So why should I bother doing it? Right. And that is a hard place for a couple to be because neither person's feeling particularly good about it at that point. So, so what do we do about it? I mean, that's the problem. What's the solution? Um, if you're the partner with ADHD, part of the solution is really putting in the effort to kind of actively manage it, right? To do the things that you need to do to reduce the impact that ADHD has on your life and the impact it has on your partner and your relationship, right? So maybe that means taking medication, maybe it means seeing a therapist, maybe it means, I don't know, watching a whole bunch of YouTube videos or listening to podcasts or reading parts of a book or working with a coach to kind of find better strategies and systems to stay on top of what you need to, like whatever it is that you need to do to make ADHD a smaller part of your life. If the people you're seeing aren't really doing a good job, right? So I don't know, you're taking medication that doesn't really seem to be that helpful and your prescriber doesn't really seem that interested in trying to find something better, then find a better prescriber. Or if your therapist doesn't really know anything about ADHD, find a better therapist, right? So doing the things that you need to do or doing the things that you can do to make a difference in your life in this way. Um, I think it's sort of a reasonable thing to say that if you have ADHD, probably you need to be working harder on your ADHD than your partner is. Or to put it another way, if your partner feels like they're working harder than you are on your ADHD, guaranteed they're going to be pissed about it and guaranteed that's going to show up in a bunch of parts of your relationship, including probably your sex life. So, um, you know, I have this line, I say free passes are earned, right? That like you should get some free passes, right? Sometimes you're going to forget things. Everybody forgets things. If you're particularly prone to forgetting things, maybe you get a few more free passes that like, it happens. But you earn the free passes by at other times showing that you've made the effort to remember. Hold on a sec, let me set a reminder. Or you know what, let me just do this right now. If I do it later, I'm going to forget. Let me just go and do it right now, right? Let me write that down. Showing your partner that it matters, showing your partner that you're putting in the effort to remember more often or to forget less. Um, Meanwhile, if you're the non-ADHD partner, maybe you need to kind of take a look at what your expectations are, right? I think it's fair to say if you're the non-ADHD partner or if you are together with someone who has ADHD, it's probably in your best interest and in the best interest of your relationship to learn about ADHD, right? You can't be like, you and your ADHD, well, good luck figuring that out, right? Like, this is a part of their life. And if they're a part of your life, then it is also a part of your life. So, how does this affect your partner, right? Read the books, watch the videos, whatever. but also talk to your partner. Like for you specifically, how does this affect you? How does this affect what you get done, when you get it done, how you get it done? Let's talk about what strategies are going to be most effective. So kind of like a simple example is stuff like, you know, where do you put your keys in your wallet and whatever, right? That like, let's put it somewhere where it's easy to see. Or that thing that you need to remember, let's put it over here so it's like not out of sight, out of mind. I don't love it being there, but I'd rather it be there than you forget to do it. Fine, I can live with that, right? So finding the places that you can be flexible that leads to overall better outcomes for everybody. Um, in general, how happy we are with something it's a sort of a function of what are we expecting versus what's our experience. That if the non-ADHD partner has this expectation that you should be able to just remember things, even if I just sort of tell you while you're going by, that may not work out that well, right? Maybe you need to change the expectation. Maybe you need to change the experience, which is, you know what, I'm going to text you later and remind you. Maybe that's the better way to go. Um, Sometimes, though, it's not about ADHD, right? This is just we don't feel the same way about this, right? So I don't know. I have this couple. I had seen them before, and I'm seeing them again more recently. And like, the husband wasn't making the bed in the morning because he was just sleeping late because he got into bed too late, and then other things going on. But it was really important to the wife that the bed get made. It just helped her feel like there was a bit of order in the world, and when she came back home, it just made the end of her day feel a little bit better. Great. He hated making the bed. Is that an ADHD thing, or does he just not care about making beds? I don't know. Maybe he just didn't want to make the bed, right? So, not everything should get dumped into the ADHD bucket. Sometimes it's just people are different, right? And we need to find a way to live together despite that difference. Um, I'm not going to go into medication in any particular detail, but I'll just sort of put a quick plug in that in general, the medication that we have for ADHD, the stimulants, they do a really good job for most people with ADHD. Like they work really well. There's tons of research. There's decades and decades of research and experience with these medications, despite what our current federal government is sort of raising fears about ADHD and the medication used to treat it. The science is 100% clear. The stimulants are safe and effective for ADHD. They're not magic. You still got to do the work. You still got to show up, but they work really well. And the problem with all these awesome strategies that I might tell someone or that you might get off of YouTube or wherever, strategies don't work when you don't use them, right? And it's that whole thing of ADHD is not a disorder of knowing what to do, it's a disorder of doing what you know. So medication helps you do what you know. It helps you be more consistent about the things that are good to do. Um, Now that kind of brings us to this then. You know, is it reasonable to ask your partner to take medication, particularly if their ADHD is making you nuts, right? Like, on the one hand, it's kind of a big deal to say, I really want you to take medication. This is important to me. Equally, on the other hand, I think it's also a lot to ask of your partner to basically tolerate and make up the difference for the symptoms that are coming from something that you're not using the most effective treatment for, right? So I don't know what the answer is to this. I think every couple needs to figure it out for themselves in that particular moment in their life. Um, but relationships are hard, and this is one of those places where maybe there are some difficult conversations to be had. But but I think as a couple, you need to figure out what you're going to do with this. Um, in general, I know what I tend to recommend, but unless you're married to me, I don't get to vote on what you do. Um, so medication aside, right? Every single couple has different opinions. Every single couple has different priorities and different things they want to do at any particular moment, different ways of doing things, right? There's like, we all love to argue about where the bowls go in the dishwasher. That's always fun. Um, but when ADHD is in the mix, it just makes those universal struggles feel even bigger, right? The whole thing about where the bowls go isn't a big deal unless you've already had like six little like kind of moments of kind of snarking at each other. Then it becomes an even bigger deal. Um, so again, is this an ADHD thing? And maybe we need to dial in medication a little differently. Maybe we need to use some different ADHD friendly strategies. Maybe that's what's going on. Or maybe we're just not the same person. And this is just like a standard couples thing. Now, the good news is if you can begin to address the ADHD, sort of quiet that down, take that out of the picture a little bit, then you just have all the other arguments that every other couple on the block is having. But it might be a little bit easier to work on those when there isn't other stuff also getting kind of piled on top. So here's this question then. What should we expect of each other? I think if you're in a relationship with someone, absolutely, you have the right to expect certain things of them, right? We all have certain standards we're allowed to set. We all have certain hopes that we would have for our partner. Like, absolutely, you should be able to ask things of your partner, but also they should be able to ask things of you, right? And that's where relationships get kind of tricky. Um, so on the one hand, how hard should the partner with ADHD work to do the things that aren't easy for them to do? As in, I'm going to remember to do this and I'm going to take care of that. I'm going to not, get caught up in this other thing and whatever. Um, you know, I, I would say it's reasonable to expect your partner with ADHD to put in a decent effort on the things that are important to you. But equally, I think it's reasonable to ask the non-ADHD partner to sort of put an effort in maybe some other ways of like flexing their expectations or flexing how certain things get done. Um, we have to be able to sort of be able to ask for what's important to us, but we should also be able to ask for our partner sometimes to be flexible about what's important to them. Um, And when there are differences of opinion, how are those differences being communicated? Are we getting angry and yelling? Are we getting sort of resentful and silent? Are we being kind of pissy and passive aggressive? Or are we talking about it directly? Are we trying to be respectful? Are we trying to keep the big picture in mind and still be a team player? Right? Like these are the places that make the difference, right? Having differences of opinion, not interesting. Every couple has differences of opinion. What's interesting is how do you resolve those differences so that you still feel like you're being true to yourself, but you also feel like you're being a decent partner and that your partner is being decent back to you. So some of this then for the partner with ADHD is how do you step up, right? How do you do a better job of doing the things that you know to do, right? And if you're not making that effort to really manage your ADHD more effectively, right? To reduce the impact it's having on your life, to reduce the impact it's having on your relationship, so you can be that better partner, I think I think it might be worth kind of thinking about why that is, right? What is getting in the way of being that better partner? Maybe part of the problem is you don't fully understand all the many different ways that ADHD shows up in your life, although your partner might have some ideas, although they might also be blaming ADHD on other things, or blaming ADHD for things that aren't about it. Maybe it's not clear to you how treatment could help, right? Maybe you got diagnosed in high school, you took medication for a couple of years, wasn't really that helpful, and then you haven't taken it since, and you're like, medication is not helpful. Or you saw a therapist, but they didn't really know ADHD that well, and you're like, what's the point, right? I don't know. Maybe something better would work out better for you. Um, might be a thing for some folks with ADHD, especially if they've really had a lot of struggles, and particularly if they've had people in their life who were really critical and not in a helpful way, who are kind of guilting and shaming and just not good about how they handled things that upset them. Um, I don't know. Maybe that partner with ADHD is carrying a whole lot of guilt and shame, right? And the whole thing, like, I just can't even go there kind of a thing. It brings up too many hard feelings. So, like, I just cannot deal with ADHD stuff. Or maybe even I can't deal with stuff that makes me feel bad about myself. Maybe there's a sense of hopelessness, right? There's this idea of like, look, I'm always the one who gets blamed. It doesn't matter what I do, I'm still going to be the one who's blamed. What's the point of putting in the effort? And of course, that idea comes from a history where that is what happens. Um, Maybe they don't understand what happens in the relationship, right? You're always mad because you're a person who's always mad versus you're always mad because unfortunately I tend to do things that piss you off, right? Maybe I need to change what I do. You still got to work on your temper, but maybe I need to not do so many things that I know are going to be upsetting to you. And then for some people, they're just entitled. That's not an ADHD thing, but there are people in the world who are entitled. So, my motto here, then, if you're the partner with ADHD, is take away your partner's easy targets, give them fewer things to be righteously indignant about. Now, equally, because again, relationships are always a two-person job, maybe the non-ADHD partner needs to step down a little bit more, right? And if they're having trouble doing that, if they're having trouble kind of letting go and letting their partner handle some things and kind of being okay with that's not the way I would have done it, but like whatever, it's done and I wasn't the one who did it. Um, Maybe they just don't understand ADHD, right? Or they're doing that, yeah, but, right? Like, yeah, I know you have ADHD, but, still, I think if this is important, you should be able to remember it. I mean, maybe, but also seems like not. History doesn't support that as a accurate idea. So, um, maybe that's the problem is they need to better understand the way that ADHD shows up. Maybe their struggles with kind of being more flexible and accepting, maybe this kind of is a sign of their own sort of anxiety, their own perfectionism. Maybe there's a rigidity in their standards. Maybe there's a fear of judgment because of how they grew up in the experiences that they had, right? And their partner's ADHD is kind of triggering some of that stuff that's really kind of hard for them to manage, right? So maybe that's the thing that needs to be worked on. Or, you know, maybe the trouble is they have a hard time with uncertainty. So they try to reduce it rather than tolerate it, as in, like, hey, you need to call the bank tomorrow. Did you call the bank? No, seriously, you have to call the bank. You need, like, set an alarm. You need, I got it. I will call the bank probably tomorrow, might be the next day. I don't know. Right. And maybe then the non ADHD partner needs to sort of find a way of saying, you know what? It's going to get done. I don't need to manage the details of it. Um, Sometimes someone with ADHD winds up with a partner who doesn't like to be wrong, doesn't like admitting that they're wrong. And if that's the case, then they're going to find someone who, let's just say, is good at volunteering for being blamed for being wrong. Whether they're wrong or not, they're good at being blamed for it. Or maybe this is someone who just doesn't like to compromise very well, right? They want to be the boss. Also, they don't want to have to do everything, but they like being the boss, right? Um, so for the non-ADHD partner, then their motto is give your partner room to step up, right? One person steps up, one person steps down. Maybe they meet in the middle in a better kind of a way. I think it's helpful also when I'm talking to couples to kind of think about this difference between what is a preference and what's a limit. So preferences are just the things that we prefer. I like milk in my coffee. My wife likes it black. Why? I don't know. Also, who cares? That one doesn't really matter. But other things matter, right? How do we spend money? How do we parent our kid? How do we feel about sex? How do we feel about family relationships, right? Like those are bigger preferences, but still they're only preferences, right? They're not objectively correct. They're not right or wrong. They're subjective opinions, right? Now, it's easy to get moralistic about things, and we can all kind of go there. But ultimately, most things that couples fight about are really much more about preferences, right? What do you prefer, this or that? So, this is the place where being a good partner or just being a good roommate, right? It's about being able to be flexible and clear about some things matter more, but therefore some things matter less, right? Some things I'm willing to stand up and fight for, but other things, if I got to let something go, I guess, okay, fine, I can deal with that one. Now, by contrast, limits are the preferences that we don't feel like we can flex on without selling out our integrity, right? These are the ones that really, really matter. If I flex on this, I'm not going to feel good about myself and or I'm not going to feel good about you, and that's going to be a problem. So we all have limits and you should have limits, but not everything can be a limit, right? Putting the big bowls on the top rack of the dishwasher cannot be a limit. I mean, it could, but if that's a limit for you, then probably a lot of other things are going to be a limit and you're going to be a hard person to live with. So, so let's really get clear on what are the things that matter the most, right? So, for example, it might be I don't love the fact that you're late coming home from work, but I can live with it. But leaving our kids, like showing up late to soccer practice when every other adult has left and they're standing in this field by themselves, no way. Like that, I cannot take, right? That one you have to be on time for. Or alternatively, it might be I can understand I mess things up sometimes and I piss you off, and I get it that you get mad at me. I don't love it, but I can live with it. But like talking to me like that in front of the kids, no way. Like that, I can't be okay with, right? That is a thing that I can't, that I think needs to change around here, right? We should have limits, but you got to be selective about what counts as a limit. Um, Now, part of what we know about ADHD is it's not just about the sort of cognitive symptoms, as in like forgetting or being distracted, but there's also that kind of there's an emotional impact as well. That folks with ADHD tend to feel their feelings a little bit more strongly. And if you feel your feelings, you're more strongly, you're more likely to act on your feelings, meaning your feelings of the moment, which might lead you to do things that you might feel differently about afterwards. But also, when a couple is struggling, things tend to be more reactive. There tend to be stronger emotions over smaller things, right? So there's more of that kind of emotional impulsivity or even emotional dysregulation by both partners. So my advice here then is if you're the non-ADHD partner and something is bothering you, you need to take responsibility and speak up about it before you're too mad to say it nicely, right? So in other words, left something out, left something out, left something out, and then they leave one thing out. They leave a fork on the counter, and then you're just like, boom, over it. Now, part of this means not taking ADHD personally. Like you don't have to feel good about the fact that they're leaving stuff out, but also recognize they're just bad at putting things away. They're not doing it to me and it's annoying me, but they're not doing it to annoy me, right? So I'm going to say something about it, but I'm not going to put like a super hard edge on it. Equally, then, the partner with ADHD, right? You got to manage your emotions well. So when your partner says, can you please stop leaving stuff out on the counter? Like, I would really appreciate if you kept it more clean. Be cool about it, right? Again, you don't have to love it, but don't take it personally. Don't make it, here we go again, right? If they say it respectfully enough, imperfect, but respectfully enough, take it respectfully enough. Um, I'm a big fan of sort of calling a timeout, like timeout. We need to take a breather. We'll come back and talk when we're both have our heads back on. or maybe have some hard conversations when the medication is working rather than once it's worn off. That might also help having some, especially with those harder conversations. There's this comes from Ellen Bader, who runs the Couples Institute, which is his couples therapy training program, which is awesome. And she kind of talks about making a clean request and then taking a request cleanly. So I'll give you two examples. You can guess at which is the one that's clean and which is not so clean. So one example is, hey, can you clean up the kitchen at the end of the night, like get everything put away? It would be really helpful for, like in the morning for me to come down and just like start with a clean kitchen. Versus, you need to clean the kitchen. I've been running my ass off all day. I've done so many things. Like, you need to be the one to clean the kitchen. Those are the same request in terms of what's being asked, but man, are they not the same request, right? You are not going to get the same response from those two options. So here's what a clean request contains. First of all, it's specific about what's being asked. Could you clean the kitchen before you go to bed? Versus, I need you to do more around here. Too vague. Um, it only stays on one topic. It doesn't get into all this other stuff, right? The whole thing of you need to clean the kitchen, I've been running around all day. Like, you've been running around, I've been running around. Let me tell you what I've been doing all day. And now we're arguing about who had more things on their day versus actually getting the kitchen cleaned. Also, a clean request, it just makes the request. It doesn't pile on with sort of justification or criticism or kind of side swipes or any of that stuff, because it is really hard to not respond to that when our partner gives us that. We should all be better than that, but it's really freaking hard. Um, Equally, if you're on the receiving end of a request, try to take it cleanly, meaning only consider what's being asked. All they're asking is, can I clean the kitchen, right? That's it. We're not going to get into debate about old stuff. We're not going to bring up old hurts. It is just, can you clean the kitchen? Um, if you have other things to discuss, that's fine, but let's finish the first topic first, right? Am I cleaning the kitchen? Yes or no? And because your partner is not going to be perfect, sometimes you just let some tone go by, right? There's a bit of an edge, but I'm not picking it up. Um, sure, I can clean the kitchen, or you know what? I really can't. I got this other thing I need to do. Um, One of the things I often recommend to my couples is taking time to talk shop, right? Like, what's going on, who's going where, especially when they have like multiple kids with multiple activities where someone's work schedule isn't total 9 to 5, consistent, predictable, but meeting at least once a week, it might be more, and just talk through the week. Like, what is going on? Who needs to be where? What's happening? What do we need to do? What do we need to know about? Right? What does Team Snap say about the kids' soccer practices? When is that dinner you have? When is book club? Like, wait a second, did the school play? Did the timing get changed on that? Right? And to just sit down and plan out the week, because there's nothing worse than those last minute panics of, wait a second, I thought you were taking the kids to soccer today. Um, if that came up 3 days ago or even one day ago, you have options. At the last minute, nobody has good options. So show up prepared for the meeting, know what's going on, have stuff on your calendar, know what Team Snap says, whatever. So show respect by doing the things that you agreed to do, and show appreciation for your partner doing this stuff. Even if for you it's easy to do it, doesn't matter. Show some appreciation. We all do better when we get a bit of appreciation. I think we also need to talk about, like, where do reminders fit? Right? This is that whole thing of like, I'm just being helpful and giving reminders versus no, you're just nagging me, right? Like that's the thing here. So on the one hand, people were really good at being organized and on top of things and managing time and remembering stuff, right? It's really easy for the non-ADHD partner to kind of be that external executive functioner, right? But the question is, do they want that job, right? Maybe they don't. Also, by the way, maybe their partner doesn't want to give them that job, right? Like, I don't want you to remind me all the time, makes me feel like you're my mom or my boss, and I already got one of those I hang out with all day. So part of this is to have some discussion about like, how do we do reminders? Like, do you want reminders about what? Like, what do you want me to remind you about? What do you not want me to? How do I give a reminder? Where do you give the reminder? Right? To really talk this out so that both of you feel okay about how this gets handled. So for the non-ADHD partner, the balancing act for you in this is, on the one hand, you want the security of knowing the things that need to get done by you, my partner, are going to actually get done without me having to fret too much over it, versus the effort of, I want some things done by you without me having to spend more energy reminding you than it would take to just do it myself, right? So that's your balancing act. Now, if you're the partner with ADHD, your balancing act is, obviously you want to hit the mark, you want to feel effective and like, yeah, I got this, and there it is, I did it. But also, you want to feel like an equal partner in this relationship, right? I can handle the things I need to handle. You don't need to pester me about it, right? So this is how like these things sort of intersect and begin to maybe get complicated if you're not on the same page about how these things get handled. Which kind of brings me to this idea, I kind of call it working with, not for. So partners who are equals, meaning both people have equal say, right? When there's a difference of opinion, we both have the same number of votes, right? That's called working with. Like, I'm working with you as an equal. Now, employees work for the boss, right? The boss gets more votes than the employees do. When there's a difference of opinion, the boss is the one who decides what happens. The analogy sort of breaks down a little bit, but like kids work for the parents, meaning when we're discussing brushing of teeth, sorry, kid, you don't get the same number of votes as I do, brush your teeth. Equals are allowed to say no to a request. Hey, can you clean off the counter? You know what? I'd really rather not. Or I have other things I would like to do first. Or tell you what, I'm not going to do it tonight. How do you feel about me doing it tomorrow? Right? You can counter offer with an equal. Um, so a division of labor then is always a good idea, right? Like it's always easier to live together than it is to live alone. Um, but maybe we need to decide, are there some decisions that are a 50-50, right? Like if we're going to buy a new car, probably we both have some votes on that. But some things, like one person has a tiebreaker. Well, if it's my car, I should get a little bit more of a vote on that. But then there's going to be other stuff where it's just like, dude, you handle it. I don't even want to know about it. Or I'll take care of this. Like, don't worry about it. Right. So maybe that's part of that working with is to figure out how we sort of divide up who handles what. Um, now I had this one time I was kind of talking to a non-ADHD wife, and I was like, look, sometimes just giving a reminder is just easier than doing it yourself. And her response to me, she sort of challenged me, and she was like, wait a second, if I have to give him a reminder, it feels like it's just another kid. Like, why is it my job to remind him? And I thought about it for a moment, and then I sort of figured it out. I was like, you know what? Here's the deal. When we remind our kids to brush their teeth, we do it because that's good for the kid, right? Like that's why they live with us, because kids don't do well when they live on their own. So like I'm reminding my son to brush his teeth because I want him to have good teeth when he grows up. By contrast, if I were to give my wife a reminder about something, it might be a thing that I'm reminding her that's good for her. Hey, remember to bring your lunch tomorrow. But it might be for some things, if I'm reminding her, it's because it's better for me. Hey, can you pick up milk in the morning? Or can you pick up milk on the way home? Because I would like to have milk in the morning in my coffee, right? In that case, I'm giving a reminder because it's better for me and it's less effort than me going to the grocery store myself, right? So sometimes for some reminders, just to be clear, you're not doing it for your partner's benefit. You're doing it for your own benefit. And that's a better deal than doing it yourself. Now, in terms of getting things done, obviously life is busy. Lots of things need to happen. We all have stuff to do. We all have more stuff than time, right? That's always going to be a thing. So basically, there's kind of three ways to get something done. Sometimes the answer is just do it yourself, right? And if you have sort of specific requirements about it, probably you should just do it yourself, right? You're going to be happier with the outcome if there's a specific way that you want it done, right? And we all have our things that we're kind of particular about. Um, Second option is maybe you ask your partner to do it. I don't really want to do this, but I'm going to ask you to do it. Now, you might have to ask them more than once, and you might also have to accept that the way they do it might not be the way that you do it, but it's still a better deal because then you're not the one putting in the effort, right? Like, I wouldn't cook the chicken that way, but at least we have dinner and I didn't have to make it. So, like, fine, good enough. Um, Third option, and this is absolutely a viable option, sometimes the best way of getting something done is to accept that it's not going to get done, at least for now. I don't feel like doing it, and I don't feel like wrestling with you about it, or I don't like the way you would do it. Whatever. Like moving on, I got bigger fish to fry. I got other things I'd rather focus on. And that's okay, right? If we can sort of like accept it and not be sort of stuck on it and resentful about it. So there's a million things that we can ask of our partner. The question then is, here's this one thing. How important is it compared to all the other things, right? I got lots of things I can ask my wife to do. Definitely some of them matter more than others. How do I want to be as a partner, right? Do I want to feel like I'm always pestering her? Do I want to feel like I'm asking too much? Or do I feel like I'm asking too little, right? Like, what is the balance on this? Now, equally, if you're on the other side of the request, right, you got three ways to respond. One way is you just do it as your partner asked you to do it, even if you don't care, right? So the couple I had seen where the wife liked the bed being made and the guy didn't really care. Here's the thing, you don't have to actually care about made beds in order to make the bed sometimes. Don't care about making beds, but I care about you, honey. Fine, I'll make the bed, even though I think it's kind of stupid. I'm not going to say the last part out loud, but like, sure, honey, happy to do it. Um, Maybe the answer is, okay, I'll do it, but I'm not going to do it the way that you would do it. Like, I'll make the bed, but I'm not like crawling over and tucking in the corners. Like, I'll do the rest of it, but like, that's too much. I can't, like, that I'm not into. Or I'll make the dinner, but I'm going to make the dinner the way that I'm going to make it. Hopefully it's good enough, but it's going to be my way. And then finally, and again, this is definitely a viable option. Sometimes the answer to a request is, you know what? Unfortunately, I just can't do that. Or I could, but I just don't want to. Like, I really don't. I'm not up for, I don't know, going out to dinner this weekend or going out with those people, or I'm not up for, dropping the kids at soccer. I'd say screw it this time. Let's just like, we're just not going to take them. Now, maybe you should be open to being convinced. I think that's probably a decent thing to do. But being open to being convinced doesn't mean that you will be convinced. It just means you're willing to listen. So again, right, how important is this to your partner? Whether it's important or not to you, how important is it to them? And how do you want to be as a partner, right? Do you want to feel like you're carrying your weight? Do you want to feel like you're doing a good job and kind of being the partner that you want to be here? Um, Now, coming down the home stretch here, last few slides. So, one of the things that's kind of a big deal, I think, in any relationship is this idea of trust, right? Can I trust you? And frankly, even in some ways, can I trust myself? But like, you know, when ADHD isn't being well managed, trust becomes an even bigger deal for those couples, right? So it's that whole thing of like, you said you're going to take care of this. Can I believe that you will? I want to believe it. Like, I like the idea that you would do this, but also you often don't. So I feel like I don't trust you. Like, you say you're gonna, but I don't know that I believe it. Or worse, if I'm not sure you're going to do it, but I believe that you believe it. is one thing versus you say you're going to do it, but I think you're lying to me. Or you said you did it, but I don't think you did, and you're lying to me about it. Or those lies of omission, right? I'm not going to tell you I got a parking ticket, but I did get a parking ticket. Um, but there's also the trust on the other side of the relationship, which is I don't feel like I can be honest with you and tell you about my parking ticket because then you freak out on me and then we're like mad at each other all night. Like, so no thanks, I'm just going to pay the parking ticket. So to get more of a feeling of trust, then it's a matter of kind of making words and actions line up more. Now, that's certainly a lot easier to say than it is to do, but some of this involves managing ADHD better to kind of close that gap between intentions and actions, right? What you say and what you do line up more. That might mean as a person with ADHD, you manage it better. Might also mean as the non-ADHD partner, you do more of the things that are helpful and less of the things that are not. So helpful things is I'm going to text you a reminder. Less helpful is as you're running out the door, hey, remember to do this thing, right? Probably not going to work out. Don't expect it to. Some of this is also managing expectations, right? Should you believe your partner? Hey, I need you to call the bank today. Okay. Versus, hey, could you call I need you to call the bank today. Okay, hold on a sec. Let me put a reminder in my phone, or let me write myself a note, or I'm going to call my work voicemail. I'm going to leave myself a message there, and you're going to see me do it, which is much more believable than, sure, honey, I got it. I'm going to hold it in my head. I also talk about this idea of what I call disappoint early, right? Meaning, if something is not going to work out, don't wait till the last minute to tell someone, right? As in, like, oh crap, I'm going to be late for dinner. If you know at 2 o'clock that you're going to be late because some meeting got called or something, don't wait till 6 o'clock when you should be walking in the door to text your partner that, like, oh, got called into a meeting, won't be home for dinner. But equally, because again, always I'm going to say equally, if you're on the receiving end, you need to handle that disappointment better. So when you get the text at 2 o'clock about being late for dinner, doesn't mean you need to be psyched about the lateness, but at least be appreciative of the fact that they're telling you, right? At 2 p.m., I can adjust better than I can at 6 p.m. And just generally having more check-ins. What's going on? What's happening? What do I need to know? What do you got coming up? Here's what I got coming up. Just like more of that check-in. So there's less sort of like unknowns and kind of gaps where problems begin to show up. Um, Ultimately, any long-term relationship, right? Nothing happens in a vacuum. Whatever happens right now is based on what happened yesterday and last week and last year and 30 years ago as well. So one of the implications of this is it's really easy to justify our own bad behavior and our own sort of lazy shortcuts or self-serving shortcuts by kind of blaming it on our partner, right? As in, like, I mean, I don't tell you things because you freak out. Why would I tell you things? Or I freak out because you don't freaking tell me things, right? When I find out about something, it's always bigger and worse than it seems in the first place. Of course, I freak out. Um, so the problem with that is if you look to your partner's bad behavior to justify your own, we never get to better behavior, right? Because as soon as one person has a bad day, it makes it easy for both people to have a bad day and to behave badly. So ultimately, then, really what a happy relationship comes from is this sort of sense of integrity of, like, how do I want to be in this relationship? What kind of a person do I want to be? What kind of behavior do I want to have? What standards do I hold myself to? And what I do, what does that bring out of you? If I want better behavior or different behavior from you, what can I do to sort of set that up? Right? How can I support you behaving in a better way? How can you support me behaving in a better way? Right? And that's really where it becomes like there's a better possibilities there at that point. So here's my last slide then. What kind of a person do you want your relationship to push you to become? Right? Like I've said before, a good relationship pushes you to become a better person. A struggling relationship pushes us to become a worse person, at least in that moment. So, how do we become that better person? How do we help our partner become their better person? I've got a couple websites, but my sort of books and presentations website is called adultadhdbook.com. Here's one of my books, but I don't know. Let's sort of stop the share. Let's do some questions and comments and talk about what we're talking about here.
Okay, and everybody, we're still recording, so if you don't mind being recorded. But if no one has questions that they want recorded, I'll turn the recording off. And other people will just
That is totally fine to not be recorded. I got no problem with that.
Okay, so then that's what I'll just do. So I'm going to stop the recording. So then if you want to ask a question, you can just come off mute. So I'm going to stop.